Welcome. It is my honor to introduce to you today Jack Whitehead, Honorary Professor in Education. Jack began teaching science in 1967 in a London comprehensive school, and in 1973 he moved to the University of Bath as a lecturer in education with the intention of contributing to the creation of a valid form of educational theory that can explain an individual's educational influences in learning. While researching at the University of Bath between 1973 to 2009, he originated and developed the idea that individuals could create their own living educational theories as explanations for their educational influences in their own learning, in the learning of others, and in the learning of the social transformations and formations in which we live and work. It is my honor, Jack Whitehead. Thank you so very much.
Hello. Can you hear okay? I can't see the screen, so I'm hoping that you can see and hear. It's okay.
Yes.
Yeah? Now, what I was hoping to do, and we can just check this, is to go through just very quickly some of the ideas that I actually talked about last year, because today's talk, and I just want to check, because I can't see the screen that you've got, whether or not you can actually see my PowerPoint slides now. Because we checked it yesterday and it all actually worked, but I'm not sure if today you can see them. Can I just check?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Can you see those or not? Because it's rather important that I get my... Can you see my... Oh, you can see me, but can you see my screen?
We don't see your screen just yet.
Okay. This is rather important that you can actually share my screen.
Now we see it.
You can now see it, okay.
Yes.
So, well, it's really great to see you, and I can see Jeff there in the foreground, so that's really great to see you all again.
Okay.
What I'm going to do is to very quickly just go through to refresh your memories if you were there last year, and also if you're new, just to introduce you to some of the central ideas from last year, because what I did last year, I actually went through these ideas of developments in living educational theory, which I'm doing this year. But last year, I just looked at the living educational theories of holistic approaches to poverty, globalization, and schooling. And what I'd like you to do is, if you actually interrupt, this is perfectly okay. If you have questions that you want me to pursue and actually respond to, please ask, because I found that learning is actually helped much better by responding to questions. So what I'm going to do now very quickly is just go through this idea of a holistic approach, which is this idea that parts of something are intimately interconnected and explicable only by reference to the whole. So this is what I'm understanding by holistic. Now, if I actually just go back to that point, the second point, which some of you may not be familiar with, it's grounded in a sense of Ubuntu, which comes from Africa, about the idea that I am because we are. But what I've added to that as well with researchers in Bath is that we are because I am. And the idea is that yes, we are as a group, as a community, but I am because we are. But if you take one individual away from this group now, it actually changes. So we've got to acknowledge that we are because I am. That's that sense of a holistic approach. Now, the idea that that was a lovely introduction, and thank you for that. And the idea that I actually want to develop today is this idea that a living educational theory, and each one of us can create our own living educational theory. And it's this explanation for our educational influences in our own learning, in the learning of others, and in the learning of the social formations which influence the explanation. And I'm claiming that everybody in the room can actually generate your own explanation of your influence from questions of the kind, how do I improve what I'm doing? And I think that each one of you will be asking that kind of question. And it's unusual in academic life to put the I in the research question. And I spent certainly the last 40 years demonstrating that it's possible to get your master's and doctoral degrees from actually studying that kind of question. Now, what I'd then like to do is to make this point. I'm often understood as being critical of education researchers, who are those people in the philosophy, psychology, sociology of education that actually make contributions to knowledge through the frameworks and the methods of validation of the disciplines of education. And this is very, very important indeed, because I found that education researchers produce really important theories, and I draw insights on those into my own living theory. But I found that education researchers in universities tend to suppress the actual embodied knowledge, the knowledge that you and I have as practitioners, that we wish to bring into the academy as valid and accredited knowledge. And I just want to look at that difference between the education researcher, who produces explanations of educational phenomena within the conceptual frameworks and methods of validation of the disciplines, and what I've been referring to as educational researchers. And we explain our educational influence of ourselves in our own learning, in the learning of others, and in the learning of the social formations that influence the practice and understandings. And that's a very, very important distinction, because I want to just try to show you later that some of the key players who are actually sociologists, they could be psychologists and philosophers, but in the British Education Research Association, and in particular the American Education Research Association, you have got key people. For example, Felice Levine, the executive director of AERA, who is advising people who are publishing the journals to actually use education research rather than educational research. Now, this is a very important distinction that I want you to, if you like, to be clear about. We can come back to that, but it's not to deny the value of the philosophers, psychologists, sociologists, but it's actually to say that sometimes they claim to actually be dominating what he counts as educational theory. And I'm claiming that what we're doing as educational theorists is to create our own explanations of our educational influences in learning. The other point about the title of the conference in terms of globalization, what I said last year was that there is a problem with economic rationality, a particular form of economic rationality grounded in neoliberal views, which can lead, and I've got the reference in my paper, to devaluation and demoralization, because it removes values that carry hope for the flourishing of humanity from the discourse. And I'm claiming that whilst economic rationality is important, it must not be permitted to hinder the full expression of this notion that we value of living global citizenship. And as I say, what I really want to do now is to just focus on the other point about poverty, because poverty has got different conceptions in different parts of the world, yet we all want, I think, to transcend constraints of economic policy. And if I actually just focus on just two living theories, which you can actually access on the web, one is from Bonnie Kaplan in South Africa. How do I use my living and lived experience to influence creative economic dependence in others? And this was working with very poor people in the area around Durban in South Africa, to show how a living theory can actually address issues of economic poverty. And I also want then to focus on Ariana Briganti's paper, and you can access this in the Educational Journal of Living Theories. I'll show you how you can access all these in a minute. And you can access this about generating her own living theory in that journal. And this is all about her work in the poor areas of the world in Albania, but in particular it also focuses on what she is doing to help 4 destitute girls in Ethiopia, who she has actually fostered, and certainly over the last 13 years, to address some of those issues of poverty. Now, what I'd like to do now, having just introduced what I did last year, is now to focus on the developments in living educational theories over the past year. And these developments focus on the use of what we call living theory posters and multi-screen Skypes, and also the idea that you can actually create a master's profession from the living theories that you're actually producing. And this is grounded in your own knowledge creating capacities as practitioner researchers. Now, you can actually produce your own living theories, and this is difficult, but I'd like you to focus on this whilst resisting, because I think you'll have to resist the pressures of education researchers whilst at the same time drawing insights from them. And these are two people, there's Felice Levine, the Executive Director of AERA, Jeff Whitty in his presidential address to BERA, have both urged the organizations to use education research, which keeps control with the disciplines of education, rather than educational research, which would focus on the kind of explanations which we can develop for our influence. Now, what I want now to focus on, this is now the developments. And do, as I say, do come in at any time to actually interrupt. But what I want to focus on, as well as showing you how to access the master's degrees, the doctorates, and also the, I want to show you how to access the Educational Journal of Living Theories. I want to focus on what you might do. For example, in Florida, you have got one of the few organizations in the world which actually focus on educator certification. Most countries have got groups of people that accredit teachers. But if you look at Florida, you've gone for the Florida Bureau of Educator certification. And what I'm now actually suggesting is that you can now develop a group of master educators grounded in their master's degrees, which are actually recognized for bringing the knowledge that you and I share, perhaps as educators, into the academy for accreditation. And what I now want to do is just to take you into these resources so that you can actually see what I'm actually meaning. What I want to do is to show you how you can access on the website freely all of these resources that I'm actually talking about. Now, I just want to check again that you can actually see this on your screen, because this is the website which has got all of the resources on it. Yes? Oh, that's great.
Yep, we can see it.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Now, what I want to do here is if you can get into actionresearch.net, you've got free access to all of these resources. And what I want to show you is there is the notes, the PowerPoints and the videos. There it is for today's presentation. You've got access to that. Now, you've got access to the Educational Living Theories, which brings up all of the kinds of accounts that practitioner researchers have actually been published. And you can just go into the current issue and you'll see this one that I mentioned earlier by Ariane Briganti. This one by Morag Laidlaw is very exciting. How am I trying to lead the best possible life? This was Ariana's Generating My Own Living Theory and Interim Report. So you can click on those and just access them freely. The documents that convince people of the legitimacy of the approach that I'm advocating are actually in here. If you go to this section here, you'll see doctorates from all over the world that have been legitimated for the living theories that people have produced. And most of them, for example, you've got quite a lot of them that have got the I in. Look at Bonnie Kaplan's How Do I Use My Living Theory? Yvonne Grotti's, this is am I bringing an educationally entrepreneurial spirit into higher education? There's my own doctorate, How Do I Improve My Practice? And the I is actually right at the heart of the inquiry. Phil Tattersall from Tasmania, he got this from the University of Western Sydney. How am I generating a living theory of environmental activism with inclusionality? But you can access all of those to demonstrate. Yeah?
We have a question from the audience, if it's okay.
Yeah, please.
Jack, I hate to interrupt you at this point, but I'm afraid that if we continue, yes, and that's where I want to be. If we continue, I'm going to forget. In this description, on the third paragraph,
yeah,
and I'm over here, you might not see me. I'm Rosa.
Okay. Hi.
On your third paragraph,
yeah,
you have that this living theory can use action research, narrative inquiry. And I was sitting here wondering, what is the difference between what you are explaining, living theory, and doing good case study, action research, or personal narrative?
Yeah, I've put here, I'll just show you that I've explained those differences in terms of methodology here. If you go into this one, can you see that on the left? And you go to the bottom here, you'll get this section which distinguishes all the different methodologies of narrative inquiry, action research, 5 approaches, plus autoethnography, and also action research. Now, the main difference is this, that if I ask the question, how do I improve my practice, I am not a case of anything. Now, case study focuses on a particular illustration or example of a more general case, like a head teacher. If you go into action research, there is nothing in action research itself that actually, whilst I find it very helpful, I always use the action reflection cycle in my own work. I find it most helpful in focusing on practice. But there is nothing within the action research community that insists that you can produce a valid explanation of your educational influence in your own learning and the learning of others. The same with narrative inquiry. That I love narrative. In fact, I can't see how you can undertake either action research or the living theory without using narrative inquiry. But there is nothing within a narrative inquiry which actually again insists that you actually produce a valid explanation of your educational influence in your own learning and the learning of others. Am I being clear with that? Yeah.
Thank you, yes.
Okay.
We have another question, if that's okay.
Please.
Hi, Jack.
Hi.
This is Lou Sabina. Go back there. Right here?
Yeah.
Hi, Jack. This
Hi.
is Lou Sabina. I've met you actually through David Eddie Spicer at some point, who's also at the University of Bath. I'm a huge fan of your work, and I love what you're doing with taking your concepts and relating them to action research. I'm also the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Organizational Theory in Education, so that's how we've corresponded before. One of the things that I'm trying to get my students to do in organizational theory is to take their theories and their action research and really not only just put it in a K-12 environment, but have it sustain in a K-12 environment. Can you talk a little bit about some of the work that you're doing and some of the work that's going on at Bath to get these theories to sustain K-12?
Yeah, sure. Possibly the best work, and again, you can access this through the website. It's actually here in terms of the master's educationer's writings. And on this section, you've got a whole series of accounts, quite a lot of them actually from the K-12. I was thinking, if you go into, for example, access Sally Cartwright's work. Now, Sally shows how she's actually done this in terms of her K-12 students. And they did extremely well in national examinations in terms of their inquiries. So if you go into this, as I say, if you'll just access this particular section here can you see this on the left? Master Educator's Writings, and then access Sally Cartwright's. You'll be able to see how this work has been sustained over several years to encourage the students themselves to actually undertake these inquiries, drawing insights from the theories of the social sciences, but generating their own living theories. And if you've got any of this, don't hesitate to email me and ask, because I found, you'll see here, there are 6-year-olds that are demonstrating that they can use the action reflection cycles in their own learning. We've got 10-year-olds from Croatia with this guy called Branko Bogner that demonstrates the 10-year-olds using the action research cycles as well as the doctoral students. So do please, as I say, email me if you've got problems or issues that arise from getting those practical examples, working with the children and the teachers to get these ideas developed for, in fact, the master's degrees and also the doctorates.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else? Do please, because as I say, I think the questions are really the most important part of these kind of inquiries.
Not at this moment. Jack.
Okay, that's fine. So what I'll do now is I'll just keep going with the PowerPoint, because as I say, you can access the whole of this from the actionresearch.net website. And what I want to do now is just to go through the points here about developing not only this profession of master educators, but this idea that we can recognize and accredit the knowledge of master educators between organizations such as the Florida Bureau of Educator Certification and universities. Now, there is nowhere that I know in the world, and I'm just developing this with my own university that I'm visiting professor at, in terms of recognizing and accrediting master educators. But in Florida, you've already got this Florida Bureau, and it's wonderful, educator certification. The only time I've met this was in Utah when they suddenly changed teacher to educator, and in South Africa where they've got an association of educators, the South African Association of Educators. Now, what I've done is actually publish this January, there's a whole issue of Gifted Education International, which you can look at about creating a profession of educators with living theories of master and doctor educators. And you can access this policy document here from that, excuse me, it's on the slides, accessible from my web, and you can actually just go into that policy document to show how it can be done. And I think that this value in terms of developments over the past 12 months is one that you might enjoy, which is this idea that each one of us is actually trying to live values which carry hope for the flourishing of humanity. This idea here that in education it's value laden. And we're all, I think, trying to live as fully as we can in improving our practice. These values like love, hope, compassion, academic freedom that carry hope for the flourishing of humanity. And this is this idea that we can bring these values into our own practice and our own lives in living global citizenship. So we're actually not just focusing in our own unique site or our locality or even our country, that we're actually showing that we've got values of humanity which we actually wish to share, which carry hope for others as well as ourselves. And that text is one that we've developed this idea with Stephen Coombs and Mark Potts in terms of this living global citizenship. So that in terms of developments, this is what I'm hoping that you will actually access, that I'm hoping you will go into the Educational Journal of Living Theories and those living theory doctorates and the master's units and actually share your own living theories. This is, and hopefully you will actually develop what we've been doing over the past year, which is what called living posters and multi-screen Skype conversations, almost such as the ones we're having here, because what I'm doing at this moment, thanks to the organisers of the conference, and also Nicole, who's really helped with the virtual programme presentations, is to actually have these questions that you're asking and also know that I can present my ideas to you. Now, this is something that you won't have met, I don't think, but this nomenclature here, this I am because we are because I am. And it's very important to get that mutual influence actually working within a collective, like a community that you're working on in the conference, but also to recognize that your individual integrity is actually to be respected and to be brought into the conversations, so that the collective never actually suppresses the individual, and the individual actually takes account of the collective and the community values. Now, those are the kinds of ideas that I'm hoping that over the next 12 months and that I'll be able to develop, because there's a big conference of the Action Research Network in the Americas for Cartagena in 2017, and I'm hoping to actually get up to date again, just as you've allowed me to do this year, in terms of the ideas that I've actually been developing over the past year. So just let me pause there, because I'd like very much just to start by just going into the again, just let me go into the living posters for you, just to show you what you can access. I presented these in Toronto on the 8th of May, and I'm hoping that you will go into my website and access these, because it gives you an opportunity to produce what we're calling a living poster, which actually shows what it is you're doing with your values in terms of your own practice, and then share them within a collective with others. And in Toronto, I used multi-screen Skype from all over the world with researchers from South Africa and India to contribute to the session, just as we're doing here and now, where you can ask questions, you can participate, there's live streaming available, so that we can get this global community of researchers sharing our living theories, but in particular with our values that we are actually claiming we're trying to live as fully as possible. And we're willing to be accountable to these, to each other. And this is how I think we'll make a real significant difference to this idea of poverty, globalization and schooling. So just let me pause there, because I've been going, as I say, for about 25 minutes, which I was asked to do, and just ask if there are any further questions. No, sorry, I can't. My sound isn't coming through. Is there? Are you okay? Ah, yes, it is now, yeah.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, thanks.
I had to switch microphones.
Okay.
Questions? Right now. Oh, wait.
This is Rosa again.
Hello, Rosa.
What then will be the difference between a teacher and an agent of change?
Well, I was teaching when I started in 1967, and every teacher that I've met is an agent of change, because they're trying to actually influence the learning of others, often children, many teachers, if you're in university, the students. Now, it's different. When you're in a classroom, you're always an agent of change. You can't help it, because you're actually focusing on learning, and learning itself is a change. But we've also got this knowledge that we want to become, I think, agents for social change, because we recognize that we are often affected by the political and economic and cultural influences in our practice within our organization. And this is rather important. This is why I'm stressing now in the developments of living theories that it's actually living theory research as a social movement. Because if, for example, you're in South Africa, you can see that unless you get resources coming in, you're not going to be able to get the technology to bring into the classrooms. That we're all influenced by the particular political and economic agendas of the policymakers within our own countries. And often we want to change those policies. So we've got to become agents of social change, which are outside our institutions. And if you like, this is why I participate in these conferences around the world in an attempt to get this kind of social change. I hope I'm making sense there, because this idea of living theory research, if you bring that into the academy, it's a dramatic change in terms of what counts as educational knowledge, because you're changing the very standards of judgment that universities use to accredit and recognize educational knowledge. I hope I'm clear with that point.
Yes, thank you, Jack.
Okay. Anything else?
Will you, Jack, this is Nicole. Will you talk a little bit more about the Living Poster project?
Yeah, sure. If I bring them up again, that in Toronto on the 8th of May, I presented these living posters as part of a town hall meeting. And in this session, there was multi-screen Skypes going on, so people could contribute from these two here. This is Liz Wolverort and Pieter de Trois. And Liz and Pieter are actually in South Africa, the University of Pretoria, and they actually put in this living poster. And if you access my website with the doctorates, you'll see Wolverort actually constructed the very first living theory for a doctorate in terms of medical education. So Liz, with Pieter, came into it was the Action Research Network of the Americas conference in Toronto, and actually participated and explained what they had been doing. And here you can just see, you can actually access a URL about the oral defense of the protocol of Liz's living theory. And then you've got Liz's profile, whole brain thinking. So you've got a living poster which is showing what people are doing. and then what they're going on to actually contribute to. There's a link to the innovative quarterly reports represent Liz's claim to creative scholarship. You can read more on Liz's living theory of practice in her doctoral thesis. So that is only one of the living theory posters that are actually available from that living theory site. And we encourage you to actually produce your own. And if you send those to me, I can add them to this collection so that when, for example, I go to Cartagena in 2017, I can actually facilitate the extending network of the living theory researchers. This one here, fascinating, of Nori Nui from San Diego University, arguing that we should actually be bringing East Asian epistemologies into our Western understandings there. You know, do you want me to go on a little more or not? We've got Leslie Wood, South Africa, on psychosocial wellness. Lovely stuff from Judy McBride, Canada. Roya Pugh, this is Australia. Jackie DeLong, Canada. But all of these are separate living theory posters that people have produced to show what it is they're doing so that we can get a sense, like you in the room now. If you would produce your living posters and just send them in to us, it would help people to understand where you're working, what your values are, what you might have actually published already, conferences, presentations you've given, so that we can get a real sense of a community growing.
Jack, you have some folks here who are committed to doing that for you. So.
Oh, that is really good news. I'm delighted. And you'll be able to join a really exceptional researcher from India who is called Swaroop Rawal. And Swaroop is doing amazing work with the poorer areas in India to help them doing what is called a life skill program with the teachers. It really is beautiful work. There she is, Swaroop Rawal, looking at the life skills program, education. There it is. You can get all the details, and then we'll be able to put you in touch with Swaroop and Swaroop with you, so that you can see what she's doing with drama. It's about, here she is, it's about children, always about the children. I want to make better the lives for the children. I want to perfect my practice to improve their schooling. It's beautiful work. So I do hope you will access that so you can see what is going on, as I say, in different parts of the world that you can actually join in with and contribute your own. So I'm delighted that some of you will actually contribute your own living posters to the collection and the community.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jack.
Okay. Now, I'm not too sure about our time. I was just asked to do the 25 minutes, and we've now been 35 minutes, but I'm okay. But you just tell me if we're over, staying the time.
We have more time if needed. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Anything else that you want me just to touch on, or you're really interested in terms of these processes?
Jack,
Yep.
It's Rosa again.
Yep.
I guess that if I were to wear the hat of an assistant professor,
Yep.
someone who is just starting and who needs to publish in first-tier journals,
Yep.
Depending on the university, it will be a risk to be involved in living theory work, since I don't think that it has become part of the establishment. Not that you want to become that. I see your work disruptive, but in a good way, disruptive, disrupting a system of conventionalism that has been in existence forever,
Yep.
that has left some important people outside of that conversation.
Yeah.
So this is very close to my heart in terms of what you are trying to do, innovative, disruptive, and I want to join it. On the other hand, it will be easy for me to join, I think, because I'm a tenured senior faculty member. But I would be concerned about those starting, and I'm here struggling.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right, Rosa. There's a notion called creative compliance, which I've always worked with throughout my professional life. Now, you can't avoid those pressures that we were talking about. And actually, in the UK, we've got what's called a Research Excellence Framework, which again is dominated by the education researchers. So to get published, most of the journals are in the traditional text, prose, the conceptual abstractions. There are very few, and we're trying to get eJOLTS now recognised on the databases. There are very few that you would say are internationally refereed journals that new academics, young academics, could actually get published in for their research to be recognised at this level. Now, I was a tenured academic from 1976, but at the same time as being innovative, you're right, and it was disruptive in terms of what I'm proposing, I actually conformed to the traditional scholarly expectations that I would publish in those high-level journals, because the money that my department got rested upon me and all the other academics getting 4 published articles in those referee journals. So I did both. And it's not easy, Rosa. I realize that in terms of that you're putting your own knowledge into the academy with these values, it transforms the standards of judgment that the universities are used to using. Now, that living theory doctoral section demonstrates that universities all the way around the world have now accepted living theory theses. That was the first step. The latest one went through this last week. I put it on my website. It's by Michael Dent. It's a lovely title about global professional and a reflexive account, and that was from the University of Malaya. There is another one going through from the University of Kathmandu about work in Pakistan teacher education. I put in my keynote lecture notes all of the different countries that have actually accepted living theory theses. But Rosa, I had to work in 2004 to change the university regulations with a group of us from Senate. We were on a working party to change the regulations for the submission of research degrees. And in 2004, we managed to get it accepted that e-media could actually be submitted in terms of doctoral theses and research degrees, which opened up this possibility of showing. I'll just show you this in terms of what you can now show using, and this is one of the first things you could possibly do. This is on the paper that I showed you. This is Ariana Briganti. This is her daughter. She's fostered from Ethiopia. And we use this process of what we call empathetic resonance in the theses and dissertations. Now, if I just move this along like this, this is a 9-minute clip. You can move it along in seconds. And you can just start to feel if any point resonates with you. Now, for me, there is a point of resonance. And checking this with Ariana and her daughter, it is this expression of a life-affirming energy, the loving relation between them, which you can bring into your standard of judgment using this kind of visual data. And using this technology, digital technology, which we've not been able to use, there it is. Do you see what I'm getting at in terms of the expressions of meaning between them? You've got the text, you've got the talk, but then you've got those beautiful moments, which actually you can bring into your dissertations as showing those, what we call the ontological values. There's one in Canada of being loved into learning, which you couldn't demonstrate in any other way, I think, other than the visual data. Is that okay, Rosa? Because it's such a profoundly important question that you've asked.
I'm very sad to say, at the conclusion of my career, that I have found the academy to be dehumanizing.
Yeah. Yes, I think, Rosa, that this is something that I think we can all work on. This is why this conference is so important, about the holistic approach with the globalization, poverty, the schooling. It's actually to transcend those constraints, Rosa. And my working life, I've been lucky like you to have tenure. I had it from 1976 to 2009, and it's enabled me to actually do this creative work without fear of losing my job. Okay, thanks, Rosa, for that question. Okay.
I would like to add to my comment, because you are the last speaker, and I always have hope.
Yeah.
And because I said that I have found at the end of my career the academy dehumanizing, I will have to say, though, that it is these flashes of disruption, these innovative ideas that always kept me in the academy. And as I leave, I know that it is hope and love that will sustain the academy of the future. So I am very positive in being here and knowing that I'm here in the United States, but this has been a conversation across borders.
Yeah. Yeah.
That have been able to build bridges. So, and in that, I think I applaud the Academy, and it has been a wonderful ride. And I know that those feelings that sustain our humanness,
yeah,
that will continue to flourish with the young faculty and students that will move our planet into whatever it will be in the future. And I think that there is another person that wants to share. Paula.
Hello, Paula.
Nice to meet you.
Hello, and you?
To meet you now. See you. I am here in now. I am here in Orlando. Last year I saw you from another town.
Yeah.
Another city. So no, just wanted to share with you how important it is to our conversations today, and how we also have been working in other presentations about finding these other ways in which we can produce our work and make it meaningful to our lives.
Great.
Bring that to the academy.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah.
Jack, Paula is my graduate assistant.
Right.
And something that was fascinating with Living Theories is that she was able to manage her dissertation, which is an ethnographic study.
Yep.
I was able to incorporate this living theory, and with much struggle with committee members, we were able to incorporate it. And I wanted you to understand how of impact your work is. Many times when you deal with, or in my experience, when I've dealt with international students, something that's really important is their lived experiences.
Yeah.
And they bring their pedagogical practices, their beliefs,
yeah.
But beyond that, who they really are and how do they come to terms with who they are and where they're going through this dissertation process.
Yeah. No, this is really important, and that's why, like with Paula, it's actually getting that, like with Paula's dissertation, making this available. So this is why I stress the importance of the web, to actually share your accounts and your dissertations, like I've done on my website. Because it would be lovely to get Paula's the ethnographic study, integrating some aspects of living theory, which are shared with all the members of the conference, and actually wider, because this is what I've done for the University of Malaya's student. I made it available this week. It's only just gone through, but it's now available throughout the world, and I've actually addressed this at my very last slide on my PowerPoint to let you know that this is the latest living theory doctorate to be put into the world. So, Paula, I do hope you'll share your dissertation.
Yeah, thank you for your invitation.
Are we okay? Because I did think that Rosa's last points, it's almost like a lovely statement to almost end this part of the conference. I thought it was very powerful.
So Jack?
Yeah.
We would all like to thank you for your time, for your knowledge, and for sharing with us your lived experiences, and for always being willing to challenge us, to disrupt our notions, and at the same time to bringing us to terms and identifying where is it that we want to go, and that the community is so important. Because I love that phrase that you said, and I told Jeff that I am so important because we are making changes, and we make changes, and that informs me, and so I'm really grateful. So thank you so very much, and it is truly an honor for all of us.
No, thank you. Yes, really appreciate it. I do. And it's great to see Jeff again. Yes. No, thank you very much indeed. Okay. Yes, bye-bye then. Bye-bye.